I've just been making a video about alcoholism, and it's reminded me of something else that's been ticking away in my brain recently, which is to do with, well, religions, but also kind of viewpoints, how, you know, what we do to make sense of the world and what other things do to us to kind of force our sense of the world into a particular shape. And in my kind of looking around at that, I came across this term stealth religion, which is a brilliant term. I think it's David Sloane Wilson, but I might be wrong. Stealth religion. The idea is, and it takes its form from religion, although it's usually applied to things that we don't usually consider to be religions. But the idea is that a religion, you know, quite apart from its particular details of its deities and its angelic structure and its particular forms of observances, you know, quite apart from the details of that, it has a particular set of purposes, and those purposes are to organise and constrain the thoughts of the people who are kind of occupy that religious framework. A religion, yeah, as I say, organises your experience. It kind of places you and locates you at a fixed point in epistemological space, in relation to a particular set of ideas, and holds you there in a particular position. You know, it kind of provides you with all the things you need. It gives you a coherent structure, but it is quite a fixed structure. And as I say, your thoughts and ideas are necessarily structured and constrained by that fixity. And with any fixed position, with any fixed viewpoint, of course, what comes with that is a series of blind spots and a series of occlusions and perspectival shortenings and horizons beyond which you can't see. All these other effects come about as a result of this fixity of a particular position. And as I say, religion, in the terms that I'm talking about it here, is one of the, you know, it's a term for that process. It's a term for that general process. And this particular term, stealth religion, is a particularly, I find, interesting take on that. Because most religions wear their religious affiliations on their sleeve. That's what their status is, very visible. You know, you join a particular religion, you testify to your membership of a particular religion, the religious practices and observances of even the most closed sect are relatively open to their members, at least. You kind of know what you're getting into. And it's usually pretty visible from the outside. But a stealth religion isn't necessarily like that. It might not declare itself to be a religion at all, in fact it almost certainly won't, but it will fulfill all of these features of a religion. It won't have a panoply of gods and angels necessarily, almost certainly won't. It probably won't have a fixed kind of creed or a clear set of kind of constitutional claims that you can look to, but nevertheless it will do all those other kind of viewpointing things. It will still do the structuring and constraining and viewpointing thing with you. And there are three examples spring to mind. I mean, the example which is probably the most controversial is the one that David Sloane Wilson himself comes up with, where he talks about atheism as a stealth religion, which feels like an oxymoron or a paradox. But what he's claiming there is that, and he's not talking about all atheisms, he's saying there's a particular brand of atheism, a particular set of atheistic beliefs which do that constraining and structuring job. They position you in a landscape of ideas in such a way that you appear to be seeing the world clearly, but the fixity of your position is, as I say, producing these blind spots, producing these occlusions, producing this horizon, and so on. So that's one example, but the other examples are quite interesting. The second example I came across, and this relates to a video I made a few minutes ago, is Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know there's been stuff written about that. And certainly the 12 steps that feature in AA and similar kinds of organisations are, well, on the face of it, they are overtly religious. You do kind of promise to, or you do acknowledge the existence of some kind of higher power. It isn't necessarily a god, but you kind of configure it in that way. But the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, no one's calling it a religion really, but it does have a kind of stealthy religious function. It does place you in a particular position in relation to knowledge, and presumably for good reasons. You know, it isn't necessarily malignant, this positioning, and one would hope that to the extent that AA works at all, and I think the success rate is about 6%, so it's not great, but to the extent that it does work, then it's a benevolent religious practice. And the third example is one that I was just reminded of yesterday actually, which was a video that Nicotine 2 made about New Age practices. New Age practices, people who practice New Age stuff, tarot cards, crystals, Reiki healing, that whole raft of activities, tend not to think of themselves as religious. They might think of themselves as spiritual, but they probably wouldn't think of themselves as religious or belonging to a religion. And I know quite a lot of these people. When I work in Totnes in Devon, it is like the New Age epicentre of the UK, so there's a lot of that stuff about. And I think there is certain ways in which that kind of whole New Age movement, if it's the right word, does function as a kind of stealth religion. It does orient you around certain ideas. There are certain kind of poetic forms which emerge from that, certain mystical statements become not exactly tenets of faith, but they become part of the currency of the conversations. So even though there's lots and lots of different things going on there, it is still locating you. And it's quite odd in some way, because a lot of New Age people feel that they're being very open-minded, and they're not dismissing crystal healing out of hand, they're not dismissing Reiki healing out of hand, they're not dismissing the existence of angelic beings out of hand. They're being open-minded, but I'm not sure that's the case. I think what's actually happening is there's a very specific kind of locating going on there, which undoubtedly feels open and feels clear and feels almost objective in the way that I've talked about in terms of atheism, but in actual fact has all of the same properties of occlusions and blind spots and horizons and darkenings and overshadowings and those kind of things. It doesn't feel like that, but I think it's still going on. It's a stealth religion. It's locating you in a fixed point in epistemological space, not allowing you to kind of walk through the environment of ideas and find out different alignments and stand next to people who've got different ideas from you. It's locating you, and that's not a good thing, I don't think.